So I'm going to start this session for today. And the goal, or you could think of it as a vision, is seeing something at the end of something. That's what a vision is. Seeing something at the end of some period of time is that those who are participating live or asynchronously will have a little aha about an idea about relationship and partnership, and hopefully have a really interesting chat. So, hopefully, you're watching this with a partner and will participate with a partner because it's really all about practice, and that you would leave with something to work on, work and play, work on and play with in the month or period ahead. So today we'll work in six hopefully fast moving segments. 2 minutes just a little bit on the breath to center ourselves, letting go of where we've come from and what might be next in our day. A couple of minutes on gratitude just to get ourselves in a more positive framework than we might be in. Uh, Third, about 7 minutes from me, just on some thoughts about vision and goals, which we don't typically think of in terms of relationship. But I think you'll see why they're so important in partnership. It'll confirm what you already know, I imagine. And then a little bit of time just to frame for you the conversation that you'll have to make it safe and productive. Um, and that's what we always want, right? Build from safety and then try to build on top of that. Then the main part of this will be time for you to chat with each other. 10 minutes each is what I recommend. And if you've been with a Diacardia podcast before, you know that we're conversing in a way that's much more like an interview of our partner than it is the typical back and forth. So 10 minutes, and I'll let you know when 10 minutes are up. And then at the end, a time to return for a chat if you'd like to share questions, comments, observations. So that's the layout. And so we'll begin quieting. So what I would recommend here are full nasal breaths. So you could do one, just remembering what it's like, um, counting, if you would, at your own pace, about 4 counts on the in breath. And then on the out breath, a little longer, about 6 counts on the out breath. And I will suggest, I'll put these up as we begin the breathing, 4 things to focus on. The first 3 are the same, and then the fourth one a little bit different. So in the first in breath, which you can do right now, just notice the breath coming in through your nose on a count of 4, and then notice it on the way out through your nose. So repeat again and notice if it's just different. Pay that much attention to the in breath. In, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4. And your mind's probably already drifted. Come back to your nose and to the breath. In, 2, 3, 4, and then out. 2, 3, 4. And for this fourth one, just notice if anything wants to let go in your body or your thoughts. If you want to do one more, maybe just focus across your shoulders and neck and see if anything wants to let go. Don't push it, just notice. So, this is just a way for us to be present, a little more focused, but it's also the building block, the essential building block for diacardia, which you know is the word for speaking heart to heart, and importantly, listening heart to heart. That in the same way that your breath and your attention to it can come and go, your attention to your partner can come and go. So 1 minute you're listening in keenly, and then the next minute you are wanting to argue or adjust their point of view, or you remember you left something on the stove. All kinds of things happen. So the breath work is actually a fundamental practice for listening and coming back to the person you're paying attention to. Now, in our first session, we talked about gratitude as the fundamental piece of relationships, that positivity, more broadly than gratitude, positivity is really critical. And that in great relationships, there is a ratio of 5 apples. Hopefully, you like green apples, but 5 green positive expressions with your partner. For every one little rotten apple you got to hand to them about leaving the dishes in the sink or whatever it happens to be. And so attending to that ratio, as we talked about last week, is really important. So I just want to offer you a way now that you could structure your exchange. You can exchange anything in your gratitude. I'll be giving you about a minute each, and I'll time it for you. You can express anything in any way you want, but sometimes it's helpful to have a cue, sometimes to have a different prompt than you've usually had. So, what I want to share is that my wife Jennifer is not with me today. She's on the way to one airport, and I'm sitting in another airport across the country. She's in San Francisco, and I'm in New York. But I know she would be here. And in our case, I would say, Jen, not thanks for inviting me, but thanks for accepting my invite to be here now. Typically, in relationships, one person is more the inviter for this diacardia kind of work, likes to reflect, maybe, likes to express their feelings, likes to hear what their partner is feeling deeply or about the relationship itself. While the other partner needs to be drawn in some ways. I say needs to be, but they choose to be. They choose to answer the call and to say, yeah, I'll go to that thing. I'll go to that workshop or that seminar, or I'll try a new technique with you. I'll do that. So there's a way in which you've both shown up today. Hopefully your partner's with you, but maybe you'll draw them into this later. You're the one who invites and they're the one who says yes or no. So I'll give you a minute now. So maybe the person who more typically invited the other person, maybe the person who's more typically the one who invites, can share a minute of gratitude first. And then in the second minute, the person who has accepted the invitation, for whom this may not be their cup of tea, but they're doing it for you. I know that makes sense to you. So, the person who's done the inviting, you could go first. Thanks for accepting my invite. And you have a minute just to talk about that in whatever context you want, in any way you would like to frame it. So, the one who's been invited, this is your chance to share your gratitude. So, thanks for inviting me to come here today because, and again, a minute to share that gratitude. Again, if you came in late, we just began with a little quiet and then with this sharing of gratitude as the foundation on which we can build to create creativity and collaboration and patience and all kinds of virtues, and also to help us, especially when things are tough, that when we need to face something hard, we need to negotiate something. We've built something positive on which we can have greater resilience to do that. So, for some of you, this is a first visit to Diacardia. For others, it's a revisiting. And so I just want to go quickly over the why and the what and the fundamentals of this. Why did we start Diacardia? Because relationships, especially one-to-one ones, are probably the greatest source of joy and alternately the greatest source of anguish in our lives. If you've been estranged from a parent or a spouse, or we don't usually use that language, but estranged from a boss or a co-founder, it's as hard as life gets. And not only is that true that the end result typically is joy or anguish somewhere on that great long spectrum, but happiness and communication are two of the key things. Communicating are key to two things: happiness in life. The people with purpose, we know, are happier, and people with connection are happier. And it also creates accomplishment. I'm just back from a reunion at my undergraduate school at Yale, and I heard a great social psychologist talking about happiness. And her first point was happiness drives accomplishment. She was talking for all the business executives in the room and all the people who are thinking about work still as their dominant way of being. And she was sharing with them that that this is a key way to move into happiness is through building connection, and happiness is also a great way to build into effectiveness. So, what is diacardia? It's understanding and practicing something very different, not communicating through the logos or logic or logistics and facts and data and ideas, but communicating instead between hearts. And it's easy to understand at the level I've just shared it with you. You know the difference between sharing facts and ideas versus sharing something that's important to you and that touches you in this kind of place here or down below. So the important part is practicing. And I've created this because there's a million smart people out there, millions of people, and you can find their stuff anywhere. But the key these days is to find the time to practice the things that really matter. And there's no better place than a diet to practice. So, how? I'm going to share some ideas as we get into this, and then give you, in the primary part of this, a chance to practice with each other. Hey, Betsy and George, good to see you. And everybody, I told at the beginning, sorry for the technical snafu that some of you uh, got a bad link from me. If you want to go off camera, totally fine. It's really an exercise for the pair more than a community practice of communication. So whatever you want to do is great. And who for diacardia, pairs that matter. So sometimes they're vertical is the way I think of them, parent to child or CEO to COO. And then sometimes they're tilted like this and hopefully become horizontal. Hopefully, in marriage, it's a horizontal, equal relationship where we're sort of levering each other upward to become better individuals and to build a better partnership. And feel free to come to these sessions with the same partner, a marital partner, a business partner, an adult child, or to do it episodically if there's somebody that you think it would just be great to have a good session together with. So, a little bit then about the topic for the day before I set you up for your own practice. What you are doing, so like double thumbs up. I mean, kudos for you, is you're doing perhaps the most important thing in the research from John Gottman, who's probably the primary expert on marriage, is that you're turning toward each other. Shoulder to shoulder, by the way, is really great. But you'll probably, when you talk to each other, turn more toward each other literally. But in enduring marriages, in the research that John Gottman did at the University of Washington, 86% of the time in healthy marriages that lasted, people turned toward each other. And in those where they divorced, people turned away from each other. And Gottman was able to predict divorce at a 95% success rate, watching a 15-minute conversation, and found out in his many, many years of study. And his wife, who's a tremendous partner, by the way, she's a practicing clinical psychologist. They've really reinforced the idea that turn toward, especially when things are difficult. So, yay for you, whether today is a great day in your relationship or your marriage or your partnership, or a tough day, you're turning toward. And that's the first and most important thing. And to do it positively, that's even better. So, I'm going to talk about vision and goals today, which, again, as I said at the beginning, is not what we typically think of in terms of relationships. We think of them as organic and natural, and you improvise on the spot. But vision and goals really matter. And they typically do for two reasons, whether in business or in our personal lives, is that they motivate us. If we get together to raise children, it motivates us if that becomes a goal for us, or even if one of us has a goal. My wife was very involved in politics, and so it was win lose, and there were very clear goals, and you knew when you won and you knew when you lost. We shared her goals, and she has wonderfully shared mine. So it generates motivation so that when you're climbing that hill and it's difficult and you're hitting hard spots, you remember, why did we come here? And it creates alignment. Now, this is true whether we look at, for instance, in business, co-founders, we look at teams, I mean, in the research, or we look at couples. It's true in all three of these venues that vision and goals matter. 65% of high potential startups fail due to co-founder conflict. Okay, that's the obvious part, right? Somehow they didn't get along. But the failure to explicitly discuss and align goals and expectations is one of the most common and fatal mistakes that co-founders make. This is from the work of uh, Wasserman in The Founder's Dilemma, which he published back in 2012, based on thousands of interviews with startups. So staying aligned on goals is really important. With teams, the most effective teams have a compelling direction that is clear, challenging, and consequential. Without that shared direction, no amount of good process can compensate. And when it comes to couples, as the Gottmans write, marriage isn't just about raising kids, splitting chores, and making love. It's also about creating an inner life together, a culture rich with symbols and rituals, and an appreciation for your roles and goals that link you. When a marriage has a shared sense of purpose, it is stronger and more resilient. So that's the invitation, right? It's really important. We know it's important, but then what happens? Reality changes. We are simply not static. Life changes. So you begin with a startup with a co-founder, and it's so exciting, and you loved each other in class or in a prior business, and things are going to be awesome. But then you go from startup to scaled up, and everything has changed. You've got all kinds of employees, you've got all kinds of customers, you have a changing marketplace, you have totally different needs. Do the goals and visions get reset? Again, quoting Wasserman, the biggest problems between co-founders usually stem from divergent goals or assumptions that were never discussed. Take a marital situation, as people my age have. They began with a notion of just venturing together and maybe had some shared goals like a house, maybe had shared goals like building a family. And if they had kids, get those kids through college, right? But then reality changes and they leave the home. Most marriages, John Gottman writes, die with a whimper as people slowly drift apart, sometimes with a bang. We know that too. But 69% of what Gottman calls perpetual problems, the things that we fight about over and over and over and over again, occur around differences in vision and values. And values will be a critically important future topic, but today is about visions. So what I want to suggest is 4 thoughts to frame your 10 minutes each of conversation. First is to see vision as vision, like these things, to see the future. That's what vision is, seeing something better. And so I want to invite you each to see a vision. Now, for some of you, that may be long term and abstract and beautiful and spiritual. And for the other, it may be much more concrete this week, this month, this semester, if you're in school. So, in a healthy partnership, point 2, each person moves between being a part of the other, and their identity, and apart from the other. And this is a beautiful thing, this dynamic of coming together and coming apart. It's not always easy because we come apart because we have differences in how we see time, how we see money, how we see sex. No matter what it is, we come apart from each other. But then we have the capacity to come back together. Third point, we don't start with a shared vision, even in a business, if we're doing it right. We share a vision. And that's the invitation today. Forget the last 2 words in line 3. Forget shared vision. Stick with sharing vision. Be apart from each other in this conversation and talk about something that's really important to you. I'll give you a stem for that in a moment. How can you do that? What is the question? But start separately, knowing that you can get behind the other person's goal or their vision, right? And they can get behind your goal or vision. And that process is really important in itself. The fourth point, I gave a little TED talk at my reunion at Yale this weekend on this. Curious and caring listening nourishes healthy difference. So difference where my wife is get it done, get it done, get it done. And my approach is think about it, listen to it, play with it, see if it's the right thing before you get it done. That can be a painful, conflictual situation, or it can be a healthy difference where it creates complementarity and synergy. But it can only happen to the degree that we are curious and caring about what the other cares about and aspires after. And then we can figure out how do we support it and how do we negotiate. When she wants to finish and I want to say, no, let's the brainstorm for a while longer. So that's the context is share your own particular picture. So here's the question I would tee up for you. What would I have or be at an important point in my future? So I'm leaving this open for you in the way that I've just described. What is that time? Is it this year? Is it before you turn an important year, 40 or 30 or 60? Is it at a point a year from now where you want to be in a different job? All for you. You pick, right? Um, so at the beginning, this is much more like an interview than a typical conversation. That if you really want to get your partner, you have to really focus on them the whole time. And to try to not know with that abbreviation CCL, which stands for caring, curious, listening. And so you just might notice your nonverbals as you're listening to your partner. And if they've shared what they need to share, you can ask open-ended questions. They're the best kind that don't feel argumentative or like there's a right or wrong answer. What, when, how, what makes the goal important for you? Or how is it different for you now than it was a year ago or 5 years ago? And important questions like how would you know if you really had it? Like, what would you see? What could you measure? Is that maybe something that's measurable in a business sense or in some other sense? What would you see? And how could I support you in this? So I put up on the screen a way you can just follow me. Most of you, I think, found Diacardia from me reaching out to you directly because I know you care about partnership and I've heard you talk about it. Some of you I've coached, and some of you I've been at your weddings, and some of you I've heard you work through relationship issues, and so it's really a pleasure and an honor and a delight that people came. So as I've said, I always want to make this primarily about the pair and for you to do the work you want to do. But if anybody would like to share, I would certainly love to hear. And
Yeah, Dan, this is George. Short comment. Through this exercise, I actually said things I didn't know I was feeling. And I found that how much of my relationship with myself is huge in my relationship with Betsy. And it's the first time I've ever been able to be honest with myself about some fears I have. We didn't discuss problems in our relationship. We've only been together 9 months. We know that where we are now, we'll be further along the road because we're just getting started. But about ourselves, it was extremely illuminating.
wow, thanks, George. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate the openness. Oh yeah, the relationship with self is like it's there anyway. And if you can connect with that, what's happening to yourself in your thinking and feeling and express that, then you have somebody who can help you work with it too. And I mean, Betsy, how was it for you to hear that, if you don't mind my asking? George is sharing his inner conversations without disclosing anything that he was obviously sharing with you personally.
Um, well, it makes me think of the Grinch and the way his heart grew 5 sizes that day.
Uh,
I felt like my heart grew for George, but also for myself to be regarded in the way that George spoke about his feelings for our relationship and for me. in the course of the exercise.
Uh-huh. Wow. Thanks so much for joining me, and much more importantly, joining your partner for Diacardia. Two things before you go. One, please subscribe if you found it useful so that you won't miss a session, whether you're looking at YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple. Secondly, consider staying in touch with me and joining live. The Zoom sessions are typically held on the first Sunday of the month at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific Time. There's something about just blocking out that time, I think, and showing up live that perhaps just gives you a more solid foundation to do the work. I look forward to seeing you and to sharing thoughts on how to build a great heart-to-heart relationship.